About 19 days ago, what you see right here, this lawn space, was a ryegrass. I decided to kill it all on the same day that I was putting down a Kentucky Bluegrass seed. And in less than 3 weeks, I've got the start of a nice, beautiful, young lawn. Let's go back 19 days so you can see exactly what I did to get this result, because this result is just gonna continue getting better week after week after week, all the way through the rest of the summer and the rest of the fall. Today I'm going to be doing something where I'm starting a project that is very weird. It's not a normal project whatsoever. What you see right here is this strip right next to my driveway. 3 months ago, that patch was basically bare dirt, and I want to put a mono stand in that spot. But because I live in a warm season climate, I knew that existing warm season grasses were still dormant under the dirt. So instead of waiting until the middle part of summer to go ahead and kill whatever was left underground, I decided to plant annual ryegrass. The thing is, I don't want annual ryegrass there over the long run. Annual ryegrass is a cheap seed. There's nothing particularly special about the grass. It will eventually die on its own, but it's super easy to germinate and get it to grow really fast in the spring. So that's what I did. I grew a lawn from scratch in 10 days. But now that we're in the middle part of July, all of the dormant warm season grasses that were in that spot are starting to really grow. They're starting to flourish underneath the canopy of the annual rye. Now, ultimately, I want to put a monostand of a particular variety of kikuyu grass, a warm season grass in that spot. But I don't want any common kikuyu grass or common Bermuda grass or hybrid Bermuda grass or whatever else happens to be growing there. So before I put down my fancy kikuyu grass in this lawn space, I need to make sure that everything is fully exterminated, all of the undesirables. So again, if I go ahead and blanket spray that thing with glyphosate, also known as Roundup, then that means I'm just going to have a whole bunch of bare dirt again for a while. And considering the fact that it's July 10th right now, let's say August 15th rolls around and then September 15th rolls around, common kikuyu, common Bermuda grass could still continue germinating or growing out of the dirt from seed or stolon or rhizome at any point. So to be completely sure that I have a pure area, I don't want to go through another 3-4 months of bare dirt. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be overseeding Kentucky Bluegrass into this area. That is crazy for Southern California, but I know that the Kentucky Bluegrass will be very easy to kill off later on once I'm positive that I don't have any remaining common kikuyu and common Bermuda grass in that spot. And if the process takes a long time, I could have a very nice green lush lawn all the way through the fall and the winter around here, because it never gets cold enough for Kentucky Bluegrass to go dormant. So by spring of 2024, then I'll be able to start transitioning to my monostand, my monoculture of hybrid Widget kikuyu. But what I think is particularly interesting about the process here is most people don't realize this. You can go ahead and blanket spray glyphosate and seed on the same exact day. The reason for that is glyphosate is foliar absorbed, so the existing grass sucks in the herbicide through the leaves and translocates it. It moves it down into the root system, which will eventually kill the plant. If I put seed down and then spray glyphosate on it, or if I spray glyphosate and then come back later in the day or maybe the next morning and put seed down, the germination of that seed will be unaffected, and then the grass, like the sprouts coming out of the ground, are also going to be unaffected. This is one of those things about grass that most people don't know. And if they do know it, they've never experimented with it before. To kill off grass, it needs to be green and growing, so it can't be dormant. So before you go ahead and start spraying something to kill anything, whether it be grass or weeds or whatnot, you need to make sure that it is in active growth phase. And a lot of times that means you need to give it a little bit of extra water in the week prior to trying to kill it all off, so that you could be sure that it's healthy. You also want to let it get a little bit overgrown so that there's more leaf material to absorb the herbicide and bring it down to the root systems. So right here, this is very shaggy. I haven't cut this grass in almost a week, so there's plenty of leaf material available to take in all of the herbicides. All right, before I drop seed, I want to show you what is in the lawn, which is what I would expect, what I was expecting would be in the lawn. So we've got general weeds. These are basically clovers here. Most likely it's California burr clover. You've got other sorts of weeds, which very easily you could just pull up like that. So that's not really what I care about. These are annual rye seed stalks. So typically I mow those off, but I haven't mowed them in a while, so that's not a weed. We do have a handful of sedges in here. So if I were to dig that out, there would be a nut underground attached to this. Like the nut, it kind of looks like a little nut underground, little ball, like a tiny bulb plant. So these are really hard to kill. You got to use specialty products. Glyphosate even won't kill them very easily unless you hit them with multiple rounds. So those might still exist in the lawn even after I hit this with glyphosate. So there's a few sedges throughout. And then if you get in really close, so that right there, I don't want to break the leaf because I want herbicide to go on it. That right there, it's a little darker than the sedges are. That is most likely, see how it's all pointy? That is mostly a kikuyu grass, probably a common kikuyu grass in here. And then throughout is also some Bermuda grass. Now, as you go over here, during the fall, winter, and spring, everything over here is under more dense shade because the sun is lower in the sky. So the soil temperature here goes cooler earlier in the fall and it warms up later in the spring. So all of the warm season grasses here are dormant for a longer portion of the year than they are over there. So over there, there's not very much kikuyu and Bermuda grass, but over here there is. Take a look. As we go further and further this way, we've got everything is, I'm going to move the shadow here. Everything is starting to creep over the edge. Look at this right here. All of that's going over. This is all unwanted warm season grass. It's all going over. We got more weeds. And if you look really close, we see all of this ground cover warm season grass all over the place over here. So all of this stuff wasn't getting killed off during the off season because it was all dormant. When you spray glyphosate onto dormant grass or a dormant lawn, it just doesn't die. If you want to kill a warm season grass, regardless of what it is, the best time to do it is in early summer when there is tons of daylight, plenty of heat, and the grass is in full bloom, like it is growing gangbusters. All right, so for this step in the process, I decided I was going to put the grass seed down first and then put the glyphosate right on top of it, just to show really that this works. Kentucky Bluegrass seed is very, very small, so I really got way down to the ground so that I could precisely place the seed, and I didn't want it to blow in the wind. Because I'm putting the grass seed down on healthy, green, growing grass, I can't be sure that it's getting down to the soil, so I decided to go ahead and water it, hand water it, to try to encourage and push as many of those seeds off of the grass blades down to the soil. Of course, you can't put glyphosate on wet grass, so then I waited. It was something like an hour and 45 minutes till I felt that the grass was dry enough. Keep in mind, this was July 10th, so sunny day in mid-July. It doesn't take long for those grass blades to dry off. At about that hour and 45 minute mark, I went and sprayed the whole yard down, that whole yard space down with the glyphosate, being careful not to hit the neighbor's yard. I then went and touched up a little area up at the end of the driveway by the road that we're turning into a planter bed. And then I walked away for about 48 hours. You gotta give the herbicide time to get into the leaf tissue and down to the root system before you start cutting it. By July 12th, I started cutting the grass with my reel mower, bringing it down incrementally, a little bit at a time every day until I was down as low as I possibly could. That was probably unnecessary, but that's what I did. By July 13th, on day 3, you could obviously tell that most of the perennial rye was mostly dead, and I was still in the hand watering phase. Even though I've got my new fancy irrigreen sprinkler system in, which I've shown here on this video already. I'll link to informational videos about it in the description below. But even though I have this really fancy system, hand watering is the way to go when we're dealing with seed, because I don't want an aggressive, abrasive water flow to move my grass seed around. Eventually I found first germination on day 9, after the vast majority of everything in the lawn was fully dead. And here you see on day 10, I'm finally starting to see just a tinge, just a very faint haze of green over the side lawn next to the driveway. All right, it's been 10 days since I put the seed down and put the glyphosate down right on top of the seed, and the Kentucky Bluegrass is already starting to grow. Looking close. There's all that new stuff growing up. Little tiny bits of baby bluegrass everywhere, all surrounded and protected by the dead annual rye. Get in really close. Some, a little bit everywhere. What is nice to see is that all of the unwanted warm season grasses that were creeping over all appear to be dead. All of the warm season stuff that was just sitting on the ground underneath the perennial rye all appears to be dead. As expected, there's a sedge right there. There's a handful of sedges over here that are still going. Sedges are pretty hard to kill. It takes a lot of time and effort to get rid of them. Over here, there's a lot of sedges. Some of these look like they're dying. Some of them look like they're going to come back. Like, for instance, those look healthy. They might have been underground, not even really sprayed. So, whereas some of the others are yellowing out and kind of folding over for their inevitable death. Regardless, there's a happy one right there growing up. He's like, yeah, all right. So in any event, the last glyphosate application is going to kill off a number of those. So even though it's not going to kill them all, I'm going to have less to deal with later on. Also, I've got less Bermuda and undesired or the unwanted kikuyu in this lawn. So all of this stuff, basically this pad is cleaned up now. So once the bluegrass comes in, it's going to be almost 100% bluegrass. It'll be closer to a monostand than the annual rye was a couple months ago. Here's a little green patch. Looks like I missed it, or at least I didn't get very good coverage with the glyphosate application right there. But that doesn't matter too much. It's annual rye, so eventually it'll go away on its own while the bluegrass takes over the space. So with all of that said, this is the 19th day since I put the seed down. 19 days ago, I put the glyphosate down. 10 days ago, the Kentucky Bluegrass that you see back there started growing. So the KBG that you are seeing here on your screen, this stuff has only been growing for about 10 days. There are obvious areas where it's coming in a little bit thicker than others. That probably has mostly to do with the density of seed that I put down. No matter how careful you are almost always going to put a little bit more seed in certain areas than other areas. It's just, I mean, it's just part of the game. This tiny little area right here, I have very sparse germination, so I'll probably have to do some pre-germinating of seed, mixing it in with a little bit of garden soil, and then just putting it down here on this one spot to get good coverage all the way up to this very important part of the lawn. As I've said in other videos, after you seed, one of the next things that you're going to be doing 3-4 weeks later is putting a little bit of extra seed in the thin areas. It just always is the case. However, with Kentucky Bluegrass, you don't really have to, because it will spread on its own and it will fill in those spaces eventually. All of the dead brown that you're seeing in this shot is the ryegrass that died off a couple weeks ago. It will slowly break down over time and just become part of the soil while the Kentucky Bluegrass takes over and dominates the area with green. First germination for this Kentucky Bluegrass was day 9 after seeding, and already many of these baby grass blades have 2 leaves. They're already starting to thicken out. This spot right here is the result of the soil settling down. We did some trenching work to put in a drain that drains all the way to the street. The drain starts near the back of the house. It goes all the way to the street. I'm gonna have to do some leveling later in the season to get this to be flat again. Still got a little bit of weeds growing up and some of the old grass. This is, I think that's a kikuyu grass. It's either a kikuyu or Bermuda. I'd have to get close, let it develop a little bit more, but I'm pretty sure that's a kikuyu grass. There's a couple more over there. These are the kinds of things that I'm trying to eradicate from this lawn space. Here in Southern California, you're going to find a lot of kikuyu grass invading pretty much every lawn.
For 19 days, I've been watering this grass as if nothing had germinated. But starting today, I'm going to change my watering practices to once a day watering. If you want to learn more about the process of the watering pattern that we do, at least the watering pattern that I talk about, go ahead and take a look at this video up here. This is about watering your grass seed and then transitioning into watering your baby grass. This is a very important step in the root development of your grass and getting it to harden off so that it can take care of itself throughout the years, throughout the coming seasons. For those of you who don't know, I also send out weekly emails that are timely pieces of advice for lawn care tasks that happen throughout the year. So for instance, if it's September 1st, I'm sending emails about stuff to do in the lawn somewhere around September 1st, late August to early September, things like that. I got something like 500 videos on this channel. There's material available that is relevant to every part of the year. So if you want to get those emails, scan the QR code here on your screen or take a look at the link down in the description below. And of course, for a follow-up video about transitioning from watering grass seed to watering baby grass, make sure to watch the video all the way up here in the corner. This is my plan for how to stop watering seed for the purpose of germination and to start watering baby grass for the purpose of developing a new plant.